And originally it was supposed to be very shortly after your graduation, but then it was put off for a month.
Yeah.
Originally, yeah, June 26th, maybe? I don't know. But then it was actually on July 21st, 2014.
So then, I cried a lot the night before the surgery. Okay, so, before the surgery, like, I was okay with it. I'm like, you can't freak out. I mean, you're not going to be paralyzed, you're not going to die, you're just going to get your back fixed. And I always have problems with changes in my life. So, of course, on the day that it happens, I freak out, I cry. But the night before, I was just researching a bunch of stuff about CHEO, what it's going to look like when you arrive, so I familiarized myself with it, so I wouldn't be as scared, but I was still terrified. And I looked up scoliosis cases, and they're like saying, don't ever get the surgery, it hurts too much, like, it's caused chronic back pain, I wish I'd never done this, whatever. And I'm like, oh my god, Mom, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. And then I get there, and like, along the way I cried so much, and I was just like, I wish this car ride lasted forever. Because, like, once I go into the surgery, it's never going to be the same way again. And then we got there, and it was really early, like, there was no one there. But we went up to the floor, and the part that we had to go to wasn't open yet, so we stood there, and I braided my hair, and, because they said no makeup, braid your hair, or something, so that it's out of the way for the surgery, and whatever. So, then, finally, we were let in, and Mom and Dad got visitor badges, and Emily and Katrina weren't allowed there, so I had to say goodbye to them early. And then we went into this room with a nurse, and it was like typical hospital room after a surgery or whatever you'd think. 2 beds, curtain, big window. She complimented me on my hair, saying it was like wedding hair, and then she put like this patch over my hand. It was like a numbing gel, because that's where they were going to put the IV in. And she gave me this tiny pill so that I could relax, because I was already starting to freak out and stuff. And, like, CHEO is meant for little kids, basically, so the dosage she gave me wasn't enough to relax me. She's like, okay, you might be a little wobbly now, and I'm like, I feel the same as I did 10 minutes ago. So she's like, okay, now slowly walk down the hall and put this on. You have to take off all your clothes underneath, and it was like a hospital shirt and pants, and like you're not allowed wearing underwear or bra or anything. And then once I got that on, I met Mom out in the hallway, and we just started crying together. Like, I was crying, she's like, I'm so sorry and stuff. Then she started crying because I was crying, and she didn't want me to feel sad and stuff. Oh, but wait, I forgot a part. Before we went into that room with the nurse, we waited for like 10 minutes in this little room with like kid toys everywhere. So then the nurse was like, okay, you're going to be really well. I'm like, I can walk to the room or whatever. And she's like, no, get on the little gurney or whatever it's called. And then she said, we'll wheel you there and stuff. And I'm like, And then I started getting upset. I started crying again, because it's like, I'm not going to be able to walk until after this surgery is over. So it's already changed. Yeah, I don't remember what my back used to feel like. But it doesn't feel the same anymore. Okay, so they wheeled me into this room, and they gave me another pill, no, 2 or 3 pills, to like really get me like calm down, heartbeat and stuff, because I was crying at this point. I was crying as we went into this room thing. And then I was just lying there, and I started hyperventilating, and I'm like, can I leave now, Mom? I don't want to do it. And then she's like, no, you're in too deep. Gotta do this. It's for the best. And then they kept looking at me like, the nurses, they were just like, oh, I feel so bad for you. And then like this family that had like a little kid that was like 2 or 3 years old, tops, they were like looking at me like, why are you crying? Like, my kid isn't even crying, and you're like 17. Like, they don't realize what they're going through. I do. They don't know how to read the stories online.
Yeah, you get into trouble when you Google stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what they told me.
Mm-hmm.
I told the nurse about that and said, oh, that's a bad idea. Like, if you read online, you hear a bunch of bad stuff and you forget about the good stuff. And there was this nurse that was taking care of me, and I was like, did anyone ever say that you look like bones? She's like, yeah, I get that a lot, actually. I was like, okay. I just continued crying. So finally, like, I thought they were being ridiculous, but really I was the ridiculous one, because they gave me this little Crayola, like, container that you blow bubbles with, but it's meant to, like, slow down your breathing and stuff, and I'm just like, what's wrong with you people? I'm a little kid, let me hyperventilate. I wanted to cry and just put it off as long as I could, because as long as I was hyperventilating, my heart rate was up, they couldn't do anything.
And what were the thoughts going through your head that were really freaking you out right before the surgery?
My back's never going to be the same again. It's going to hurt. I might be paralyzed. I knew I wasn't going to be paralyzed. Like, he said that a million times. So I'm like, I'm not going to be paralyzed. But what if there's something that they didn't think of? What if the x-rays didn't show some complication? They're going to have to worry. What if the person looking at my spinal cord isn't paying attention because they didn't get enough sleep last night? And they just are like, oh yeah, what was I thinking about? Oh yeah, oh no, they're getting too close. Wait. Oh no, it's too late. There goes her legs. But no.
Or, like, and obviously you weren't worried at all about death?
No.
Okay. And were you at all freaked out by the idea that you were about to be cut open and they were going to be, working on your insides for several hours?
I wasn't really worried about that, other than the spinal cord thing.
Okay.
So finally, they calmed me down enough, and then Mom was going to be going into the surgery room with me, the operating room, but they said that it would be too much for me, because, like, I would probably start crying again if she were in there, too.
Because you were hyperventilating right around the time they gave you the bubbles?
Yeah.
What were you saying?
Because I was hyperventilating.
What were you saying to them?
I wasn't saying anything, I was just crying and hyperventilating and just freaking out in general.
Okay. Anyway.
So they wheeled me to the room without Mom, and they're like, oh, so let me take off your shoes so it's a little more comfortable. And it was freezing in there, because it's always freezing in Chio, so I'm like, okay. And then one nurse was on my right, and she was talking to me, and she's like, so what do you want to dream about while you're under the anesthetic? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I used to do a lot of research on cruise ships. I guess it would be nice to dream I'm on a cruise ship or something. And then I'm like, ow! Because he put the IV thingy
They tricked you.
No, they didn't trick me. He said, don't worry, this won't hurt and stuff. And then she's distracting me. Oh. And then he puts it in. I'm like, oh, I hate you, sort of thing. And then he's like, okay, now count back from 100 or whatever. And then the other one's like, no, just tell me about your cruise ship thing. Tell me about the cruises and stuff. And then she's like, oh, that sounds nice. And then slowly I just drifted off. And then that was the end for a few hours. And then I woke up, and I don't remember what happened, because it's sort of like whenever you slightly wake up in the middle of the night, but you go back to sleep right away, because I was under, like, morphine stuff.